Hello Year 9 and welcome to Specialised Animal Cells lesson. So this is lesson number 4. Yeah, lesson number 4. It's written there, B1, 4. So this is AQA paper 1. And we are going to be looking at how some animal cells are specialised to carry out their function. And we're going to look at the different cells. There are a couple that you do need to know, but there are some really good keywords. So these words at the bottom, worth pausing and writing down: differentiation, specialised, function, adaptation, efficient, and energy. They are all very, very useful keywords. We're going to look at explaining why we have specialised cells, what they are, comparing the structure, so what's similar and what's different to the sort of generalised animal cell that we've got, and how they're adapted for their function. So let's get cracking, shall we? So first of all, let's look at this word, differentiation. Really, really important word. You're going to need to write this down, so you might want to pause us. So differentiation is when cells become different shapes or sizes to carry out specialised functions. Now, it's worth noting that after fertilisation, you would have just been a ball of cells that all looked completely identical, and then your cells would have differentiated to form different types of cells. This happens at a really early stage, and I'm thinking about all of the different types of cells you have within you. So we normally look at cheek cells or skin cells, but let's just have a look at those. So after sperm meets egg in fertilisation and the zygote is formed, we get an embryo, and those embryos during pregnancy start to differentiate. So we've got bone cells there, we've got nerve cells, red blood cells. So these are all different, but they are all cells. So they are cells that are differentiated. So they've gotten their early job. So if a cell is differentiating, they're becoming any cell, and we'll look at something called stem cells. So stem cells are a certain type of cell that can differentiate and specialise into all sorts of different cells. Once they're differentiated, they can only divide to produce that specific cell. So once a cell becomes a blood cell, it can only produce more blood cells through mitosis. Plants, however, slightly more exciting, and Mr. Deaton is doing a lesson about plant cells, lucky him. But plant cells can differentiate throughout their life, which is pretty incredible. So they have lots of undifferentiated cells, and they're in the meristems, and they can grow into any kind of cell. So, for example, if you just kind of cut a bit of a plant off, the cells there will start to differentiate back to the original position of the plant. So they'll start growing more root cells, they'll start growing more leaf cells, etc. So in our bodies, in the human body, there are more than 220 different types of specialised cell. And each cell is specialised to perform a very specific function. So again, that's another one of our key words. And the structure helps it do its function. So in an exam, you might get an example of a cell you've never seen before. And that will be specialised to do a certain job. So you have to look at the structure and think, how is that helping it do its specific function? Plant cells also have lots of differentiated ones, and Sarah will go through those with you. Now, this is a task we would be doing in class, but it is also quite a good task that you could do at home. Is thinking about if this cell had a Facebook page, how would it show itself to be unique like most humans do, or an Instagram page? What would they show to show that they are unique? So later on in the PowerPoint, there actually is a slide so you can look at, you could print it off if you wanted to, or you could just maybe draw out the basic parts of a Facebook page. So maybe a profile picture, a wall, interest, the about section, that kind of thing. And again, we would normally do this in Teams, or we would share this information, but obviously because you're at home, you can do this yourself. Now, to get a grade 5, you could give me 3 examples of specialised cells. That's a 4, not a 5. For a 5, you need to explain how the cells are adapted for their function. And for a 6, you go on to some slightly more interesting cells and the different chemical reactions that happen within them, or what happens within them. Very, very much more specific. And this is, you could grade yourself upon this. So to get a grade 7, you give various examples, etc. So I would have a go at getting all the way up to that grade 7, give links between the role and the adaptations and why they're specialised. I'm just doing in here. So workers teams are, okay, we need to, this, I didn't actually attach this, but I will. So this is the profile picture that you could create. along these lines, or you could add some adaptations in there, or there are some very more specific structured ones for you if you're finding that particularly difficult. Print out the correct one, or just use it as an outline. You can pause any of these to do that. So let's go through some of the cells, which I believe came in the last 6-mark question, either that or I deleted it. There's potential that's happened. I'll go back and have a look. So fat cells are a really interesting type of cell. So fat cells fill up with fat. If they're in digestion, you take in too much glucose or fat that you don't actually use in respiration, then we will store them in fat cells. These cells can survive on foods in short supply, and they can expand up to 1,000 times its original size as it fills up with fat. Now, there are 2 key questions on the bottom here. Why do you think they only have a small amount of cytoplasm? And why have they only got very few mitochondria? You might wish to have a little pause there so you can consider that. Well, let's have a look at this first question. So the cytoplasm amount is very, very small because this enables more space for lipids or fats to be stored within the cell. Why do they have few mitochondria? Well, mitochondria's main function, as you learned in the cells video, is for respiration. So why don't fat cells need to do as much respiration? Well, it's probably because they have a huge store of energy within them, okay? And they're a storage cell, so they're not actually needing to release as much energy because they contain a lot of fat with a lot of energy. And then we've got light sensitive cells. So these are the cone cells found in the eye. They enable colour vision. And they're in the retina at the back of the eye. This tends to be where the light focuses. And these change the visual pigment back to its form. So the final part of the cone cell is specialised synapse that connects to the optic nerve. When coloured light makes the visual pigment change, an impulse is triggered and that goes to your brain. Now, the key question for this one is, why is the centre segment packed full of mitochondria? Well, it says so on the 3rd bullet point. It says energy is needed to change the visual pigment back to its original form. So the pigment changes in coloured light, and then it needs energy to change it back to its original form. That energy is released in respiration, and that's mitochondria is the site of respiration. Okay, we've got some sperm cells. We're all used to knowing about a sperm cell from year 7. But these sperm cells, we need to start talking about them in terms of their structure, how they're adapted for that function. So we know sperm cells contain half the genetic information from a male parent, so they are what we call haploid cells, and they fuse with the nucleus of an egg cell or an ovum during fertilization to produce a zygote. Now, if we look at the structure here, it's a long, thin structure, very streamlined. It's got to travel a long way. It has a flagellum or a tail that can allow it to swim. Some bacteria have those too. It has to go through quite a large, complicated reproductive system. It's got a large nucleus containing all of the genetic information, and it's got to break the egg when it gets there. Okay, so I'm not going to read through all of those because you can, but you might wish to pause and have a look at the key questions. What is the function of the tail? And why is the location of the acrosome important? Now, before you pause, it's worth noting another key adaptation is many mitochondria in the collar, the middle piece, and that's to release energy for movement to reach the ovum. So I'd pause now. And welcome back. What is the function of the tail? Well, the function of the tail is to allow the sperm to swim towards the ovum in the fallopian tube. And why is the location of the acrosome important? Now, the acrosome is the head of the cell, and it contains a digestive enzyme so that it can break into the egg. So it breaks down the cell membrane of the egg so that fertilization can occur. Oh, I love these. Here we got a nerve cell. So they carry electrical impulses around the body to enable us to respond to the environment. So we have receptor cells, and they contain nerves that detect stimulus, such as, well, all the 5. So touch, pressure, smell, light, etc. And they carry information from the outside world into your brain so that we can respond and navigate our environment. So we've got dendrites at the end. They receive the information that they pass on. And look how branched and wide they are. Can you see they'll be able to receive information from lots of different points, really large area. And then we've got the axon, which is where the electrical impulses are transferred, and then we've got terminal ends, and that's where they move that electrical impulse onto the next nerve cell or neuron. So the key question here is, what is the importance of the myelin sheath? So have a look at the myelin sheath. On that diagram, it is green, and it is on the axon. Now, it does say in the 4th bullet point the importance, but just pause now, have a think, maybe write it down. Welcome back. So the importance of the myelin sheath is to insulate the axon, so it prevents the loss of the impulse so that the information can be transported quickly to its destination, usually the brain or the effector organs.